Well, April marks Child Abuse Prevention Month, and today also recognizes Wear Blue Day, a national effort to raise awareness. And right here in Northeast Wisconsin, a Pinwheel garden outside a child's advocacy center is highlighting the number of abused or neglected children they've served this year. On the corner of Chicago and Monroe in downtown Green Bay, you'll see dozens of blue and silver pinwheels at the Willow Tree, a display that might look simple but points to a much bigger issue.
Each pinwheel represents a child who has received a service thus far in 2026 as part of an active child abuse investigation in Northeast Wisconsin.
This year, 130 pinwheels line the lawn. Staff say that number is slightly higher than in previous years. The center works with a range of cases, including physical abuse, neglect, and children exposed to drugs in the home.
But the most common referral that we receive at Willow Tree, and has been since Willow Tree opened in 2011, are allegations of child sexual abuse.
Advocates say that reality highlights an ongoing need for services and early intervention. In addition to helping local law enforcement with investigations, Willow Tree also focuses on prevention, working with children and adults to recognize warning signs.
But the more resources and education that we have for investigative teams, other professionals in the community, and parents, the better outcomes children can have.
Willow Tree says the pinwheel display is meant to serve as a reminder that prevention starts in the community.
Adults can be proactive by normalizing child abuse conversations with children at a young age, but then kind of continuing those conversations. The importance of children understanding to seek a safe and trusted adult.
Willow Tree also says prevention and education efforts are available year-round. You can visit our website, WBAY.com, for more information on the resources they provide.